a reversal that had to be done. Subsequent to this is when I think the real impetus, the push on manufacturing started up through the safeguard duty mechanism. But what I can say probably is, while there was some increase in manufacturing footprint in the last 7 or 8 years, nothing compares to the interest that has been generated now due to the PLI scheme, as well as due to the basic customs duty, because the signals now are clear that here is an arena, an opportunity, where not only we'll encourage manufacturing, but we'll also safeguard that dumping of products doesn't happen from outside. And within that arena, I think there is an encouragement to invest. So today we are here to speak to a distinguished panel of professionals who have spent decades together in the semiconductor and the solar industry. And I would start by requesting them to introduce about themselves a little.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ivan Saha, and I am the CTO and head of manufacturing of Renew Power. So I've spent almost close to 3 decades in manufacturing, starting with gallium arsenide solar cells, and then going to silicon, concentrator, thin films, and almost all technologies that I have, dealt with. So happy to be here physically at long last. We've been doing virtual sessions for the last almost 2 years now, and very happy and to see familiar faces and look forward to the discussion.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Gautam Samanta. I'm working right now in the Juniper Green Energy as a head PV technology. I am in the manufacturing early of 90s, where 100 millimeter mono wafer 100 crystal orientations, for DOT project, we can see that, 35 to 40 watt module with the 16.4 volt, was the product. And today it has come to the 600 watt modules with the 1500 volt systems, Okay, we will discuss more in the sessions, because already India has installed 100 gigawatt of the renewable energy, out of which 42 megawatt is in the solar, and 80% to 85% on the utility scale, and rest in the rooftop sector. Thank you very much, and we will discuss.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kapil Maheshwari. Absolute pleasure to be part of this Galaxy of Star panel, because most of them are, experts from their field. I feel, I'm fortunate enough to be sitting with them. I've spent almost last 17 years in renewable, and that's whole of my career. So, I've never done anything outside renewable or solar. So, and I consider myself again fortunate for that chose a career path which is giving these results, and tried and been various aspects, from being IPP, EPC, solar modules, etc. And look forward for today's session, especially on the Atmanirbhar theme and solar cell, and what we can do with the backward integration to promote manufacturing in India. So thanks so much.
Well, thank you very much. I should say I'm very glad to see real faces here, not on webinar, although all of them are covered in masks. We are making progress. Hopefully next time when we see each other, we'll see real faces without masks. My name is Milind Kulkarni. I'm CTO of Vikram Solar presently. I have spent my entire career in silicon industry. I started my career after finishing my PhD in Monsanto Electronic Materials Company, MEMC, which was and is a semiconductor company which later on became Sun Edison. And I have been fortunate enough to get exposure to each and every node of the solar value chain, all the way from polysilicon production to modules. And I really look forward to my discussion here today. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this session on the conference today. It's quite a sunny, I would say bright sunshine in the rainy day, with the panel of experts sitting here from the solar industry, as well as a good gathering that I can see in spite of such a unfortunate weather conditions, still a good amount of people are still joining the session. It's wonderful to see. My name is Amit Barve, and I work with Panasonic and heading the business unit for solar. Have a past 18 years been working in the solar industry, been involved into the various, I would say, businesses related to solar, starting from off-grid solar to component manufacturing company to an IPP and EPC, and now coming back to the component manufacturing with Panasonic. So I'm very happy to be a part of this panel and would like to contribute best to my knowledge. Thank you and looking forward.
We also are honored to have Ruchir Gupta, Deputy Secretary MNRE, attending virtually. Ruchir Saab, very warm welcome to you as well. And probably I'll ask you to have an opening remark on the PLI scheme, the interest it has generated, and Atmanirbharta, and then we start off on the round of conversations.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, my apologies for not being able to present physically after having confirmed the same. Well, the reason being, probably all of you only. The entire industry, be it the present developers or the present manufacturers or the new investors, all of them have showed such a tremendous response in our PLI scheme that we are truly overwhelmed. And now it brings a much greater responsibility on us to see how we can maximize the selected as in like the participation, and we can maximize the incentives to most of the applicants. Presently, we have an outlay of 4,500 crores only. I have no issues in saying that this is perhaps the smallest outlay of all the PLI schemes that were approved by Government of India. But there are indications that the government would be inclined to augment this outlay, and this is precisely the reason why I have stayed back. We are working on some proposal, and we just keeping our fingers crossed that we have an augmentation in this regard, and probably we can accommodate as many number of applicants as possible. So I see a lot of positivity. The industry is quite hopeful. We are hopeful, and I believe on the back of this PLI scheme, the certain measures like the PCD or the ALMM or some of the WTO compliant TCR schemes, I think a whole ecosystem has been tapped, and especially in this PLI scheme, we are looking at not just the end product, but somehow incentivizing the entire integration as well as the ancillary products by way of the concept of local value addition. So not only we see the main line of solar module manufacturing, but also a lot of encouragement and boost to glass, EVA, backsheet, aluminum frame, etc. So I think the solar manufacturing has really come a long way, and probably now we'll have the main issue which we have been talking about so far, that while we are expanding our installations, it's largely import based. Probably that kind of issue may not be there in an year or so. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ruchirji. And taking off from what you just mentioned, I think at the very first point I want to ask the panel, including you, Mr. Ruchirji, is also the point around, is 4,500 crore adequate to realize a target of 280 gigawatts of solar installation by 2030? If we factor in the 40 that is already done and the 35 that is in the pipeline, we will be having a run rate of roughly around 25 gigawatt per annum. That will be the requirement in the country. Assuming that entire 25 gigawatt per annum in the value chain comprising right from silica onwards to module has to be done locally. What is the kind of outlay that we as an industry expect from the government? One is that. The second is, On the ancillaries and support system, be it glass manufacturers, be it EVA manufacturers, be it backsheet manufacturers, silane, and a variety of other things, what needs to be done on that ecosystem to strengthen it? Because non-silica BOM also in India, I believe, is roughly 8 to 9% more expensive than what it is probably in China. So how do we realize a cost reduction in this? So these are the two questions that I wanted to ask, starting with Ivan.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Santosh. I think Ruchinji made that valid point that obviously this 4,500 crore is not enough. If we are looking at 25 gigawatt of domestically manufactured modules, 25 gigawatt per year of domestically manufactured modules starting from polysilicon to module, getting into installation in India for the next 8-10 years, then we are looking at probably an outlay of in excess of 30,000 crore. And that is the number that probably we can, I mean, give or take a few thousand crore, but that's the number that we'll end up with, which means the number that we have right now has to be increased manifold, multiple times, and probably I think MNRE is best able to judge based on the response to the PLI scheme, as Ruchinji already mentioned, and they'll be able to support as many diversified players as possible. I mean, including people who have just cell and module, or even people who have cell module wafer, etc. But I mean, let's wait for what comes out of this, because it's quite a big investment, and government, of course, have to give us the support. But I think this is much needed at this time. I mean, we had been talking about this for the last 10 years at least. I remember 10 years back, we had made a similar presentation to MNRE, and Ruchinji also was there, and there we had asked that what do we need to make India competitive? So we have gone through this whole process last 10 years, and now we really have a platform in terms of PLI, BCD, etc., with which we can be globally competitive, be a globally relevant superpower in solar, and leading to a lot of strategic value in our investments that we are going to do. And I think the government has fully supported the private sector in this regard, and the public sector also. So I think these steps are in the right direction. And yes, Santosh, there has to be investments, I mean, similar policies to support the entire value chain, not only the silicon, but also the ancillary and ancillary industries, EVA, glass, backsheet. And I'm sure with the vision that the government has, they are also fully aware that this is what needs to be done. I think they have worked a lot, the team of MNRE, and I think congratulations to the entire team actually, to actually make this bid a really, really success. And I think similar things for the ancillary industry also is being planned, and we'll support that. Yeah, that's my initial thought.
Thanks, Ivan. Just a follow-up question on that. With an assumption that 4,500 crores, the current outlay, is put only behind cells and modules predominantly. Just as a back of the envelope calculation, what gigawatt are we talking about in gigawatt
So
terms?
with 4,500, you will be able to support maybe about 12 gigawatt, 10 to 12 gigawatt, depending on what technology you are
Got it.
choosing.
Of only cells and modules.
Only cells and modules.
The minute you add wafering or crystal growth or poly,
Then the number goes up exponentially.
Yeah,
I mean, the volume will come down. Yeah.
come down to probably single digits, like
Yeah,
3-4
absolutely.
gigawatt-ish, I presume, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, got it. Thanks a lot. So over to you, Saab. Next, your views on the same points?
Yes, I want to say a little bit different here, because if you look into the solar mission when it has started, for a journey of initially 20 gigawatt, and then later on 2014 is 100 gigawatt. So all the bidding was done in a bit different, and there are two tariffs. One is that fixed tariff, from the DISCOM. The other one is a generation-based incentives, The same thing in the manufacturing. So what I will say, this is a initial momentum to invest in the value chain. And what I could see that in the module is the lowest priority if you look into the overall matrix, and then the cell, wafer, ingot, and the polysilicon. The polysilicon has the highest weightage, around 40% on that. So initially 4,500 crore is not enough because this will be around 0.4 cent incentives, per watt, But what we need in the industry to achieve 350 gigawatt installations. So on the manufacturing side, something like 35 to 40 gigawatt level vertically integrated manufacturing should be there. And it's not only that, the ecosystems with the all bomb. So therefore, what I want to say that the government has given a little bit initiation, the momentum, but we had seen that the private sectors, like the giant, the Reliance, the 24th of June is the date, where we can say that we are proud that in the solar industry, such a high amount of, the investment has been declared by the Reliance, and they are coming in such a way that by 2030, out of say 450 or 500 gigawatt, they want to take 20% on the total share. So what I want to say that from the manufacturing perspectives, when we go for a high volume productions, there is a Moore's law, like you can reduce at least 20% of your, the cost. So therefore, the initial momentum which are there for the PLI scheme, but I will say the corporate, either Adani, Reliance, or Birla, or whosoever is coming in the value chain, even Tata, even the existing Wari or Bikram, whosoever is there, and the Renew is already there, it will bring a different kind of the price in their, another 5 to 10 years time. So that's my take. Thank you.
I think a follow-up observation on this is that one is the PLI and to strengthen it, but equally important is a roadmap on the 40% basic duty. The industry and investors, I think, would also want to know over in the next, say, a decade, how this 40% duty is going to maybe remain the same or reduce in what increments. Because for anybody to put in a lot of money, at least a decade's horizon on how the duty part of the protection is going to look like is equally important. I presume that's also a requirement from the industry, right?
Yes, I think. Suresh?
Yeah. So so right now it's on module and cell duty, but in future when large scale wafer and polysilicon investments are coming in, I think it's not only continuing the cell and module or in a tapered fashion, but also getting into the upper part of the value chain and protecting that investments also is critical in wafer and polysilicon. That's the only point. I mean duty, because with duty only things have become, the competitive edge has come now. In cell and module.
So Saman Saab, I hope you are on the similar sentiment, yeah? So,
Yes, actually, the thing is that on the cell, initially on the BCD, but there is 35 gigawatt is already in the pipeline. So what I will say, 1st of April is a 2022 is a date for the new bidding, which is coming like 2.3, these things, rupees. But there will be a little challenge, initially for the manufacturers, in a sense like, though the duty is coming, but you cannot protect the industry as well, right? So it will take at least the 6 months delay in the whole process. But anyway, I mean, I know a lot of the big corporates are taking initiative, how to take care of this duty, I mean, to avoid this duty, in a sense like they will bring the wafer, then the ingot, and polysilicon as well, from the other countries, Though there are some mafia in the industry, which have been working, like, if you see the last year, the silicon price was around $8 to $10. Today is more than $30, per kilo. But the most important part, what I want to say, that the industry will have a different kind of a roadmap after maybe 2 years, you know? I mean, we'll come back with a different technology as well.
Certainly.
You know?
Yeah, we'll do it. Thanks a lot. Kapil, your views, please, on this.
Almost on the same lines as my fellow panelists, but I would say a couple of points to be added there. Um, while, you know, Ruchanji has already said that 4,500 crore is just the beginning on PLI, and it is out of those 17, 18 PLIs where the government has already announced a list of all the PLIs, this is the smallest portion assigned to all the PLIs. Let's say for the battery storage, we are talking of an outlay of 18,000 crore, and different other things which are coming on textile or auto are also quite significant amount. This 4,500 crore, I feel, can give an initial momentum of 8-10 gigawatts. And most important, I would feel, would be the backward integration. Because before we talk of Atmanirbhar, I have said it before also, we really need to do Atmanirikshan also. Because if we keep on focusing on cell and module, I guess we have done that in past, not that we will be doing it for the first time. Similar lines on your question on BCD of 40%. While tariff barriers, you know, this is not the first time a country like India or maybe other countries have also tried some tariff barriers, including US. But this can give an initial momentum. We have all seen 25% duties in past as well with safeguard for a year. But at that point of time also, you know, the penetration from domestic suppliers were less. So can 40% is sufficient enough? We really need to answer that. How long this 40% is provided? That's more important than just the amount. Because investment would not be done based on what's available right now. Maybe how long this certainty can be given. And then as I once say that, you know, is it just on, you know, cell and modules, or if we really want to promote the backward integration, we really figure out ways to incentivizing all that. While PLI is the most welcome step, and yesterday was in deadline to submit, and I guess by 18th it will be open, the tech bid, is an important step, is a first important step towards providing an incentive for and backward integration, because your chances of getting and bid winner is increasing in the PLI scheme if you are doing more gigawatts or if you are doing more backward integration. So that's a very welcome step provided from MNRE. MNRE has been doing its job in past as well by various things what we spoke on, DCR or SGDs, etc. But we really need to think to, you know, a couple of things which we might have not missed in past. Even when we talk of this 280 gigawatt by 2030 and say that maybe we are roughly around 70 gigawatt by 2022, then also let's not target just 25 gigawatt and plan accordingly that we really need to see an backward integrated 25 gigawatt. We may still not be competitive compared to some of the other Asian countries where we largely import from. We really need to figure out ways that how do we become the exporter as well to the world. We are good at, and we have proven that in the automobile sector. So it's time that we do that in the solar manufacturing setup as well. And apart from just looking at ancillaries as a whole, we really need to figure out what it takes to the development of those ancillaries. Take an example, if the cost of power is almost 50-60% in the polysilicon or in crystal growth process, then where do we figure out those solutions as well? A reliable power at the cheapest rate is what can make you competitive compared to any other technology which you can bring in as well. So we really need to think on from those aspects when we are developing an ancillary system. The biggest advantage what we have as in country is that we have everything available on the demand side. So whatever targets we have set, we are almost there to achieve that. So the demand side exists, not that. So it's pretty easy to look for anyone else from an investment perspective that yes, there is a market which is available to me. Now is the time I put on the supply side as well. So even with, and on top of that, if there are incentives available from MNRE and Government of India, then the case is more stronger to figure out that yes, you have a market available, you have all the technology players available. It's just creating a whole ecosystem where we can also get benefits of the supply chain, which is largely, some of the other countries have achieved by the scale. So this can push the scale and this can push both technology, and I feel we should be there very soon.
Thanks a lot, Kapil. Milind, over to you.
Let us actually take a step back and look at what is enough and what is not enough. This is not the question that has clear answer. Obviously, PLI scheme is very intelligently designed, and there are benefits associated with BCD too. But ultimate actually goal for Indian government and India, this is beyond corporations, is to be Atmanirbhar. So let us ask the question, what does it take to be Atmanirbhar? So Indian corporation through government help or through other means by its risk-taking ability needs to be able to compete globally, not just domestically. Only then it can sustain itself for a long period of time. So let us look at the numbers here. For it to happen, there has to be right technology and right scale. Now, as far as technology is concerned, we can discuss this a little bit later. And when we talk about scale, with the change in the equipment capacity, I can tell you, when we go from all the way polysilicon to modules, in polysilicon, you need at least 10 gigawatt capacity to realize economies of scale. I'm talking about the polysilicon production node itself. That is approximately 25,000 to 30,000 metric tons of polysilicon factory. Otherwise, you don't have competitive edge, even if you have the right technology. You cannot go below 20,000. In crystal growth, if you do continuous Zakrzewski, which is the coming technology, it is around 3 to 4 gigawatts. If you do recharge Zakrzewski, which is state of the art, that is around 2 gigawatts. In cells, now it used to be 1 gigawatt, now it has moved to 2 gigawatt because equipment has become far more efficient. And 1 to 2 gigawatts is the economies of scale even in module. But at the node level, when you look at the factory overheads. But there is an entire ecosystem actually supporting this. For that, this ecosystem at least actually needs to have 10 to 15 gigawatt capacity. Now, when we look at our goals to achieve 450 gigawatt total renewable energy, and if you look at the fraction contributed by the solar energy, we are looking at approximately 25 gigawatt capacity requirement on annual basis. If you really look at how much total capex is required, approximately 70 billion at polysilicon, 70 at crystal growth and wafering, 60 to 70 at cells and modules. We are really looking at $210 million per gigawatt plus soft costs, you add them up around 250 million per gigawatt. So we are really actually talking about $600 million in PLI, right? For 25 gigawatts, we are looking at $5 to $6 billion of investments. And coincidentally, cost of production on annual basis is also approximately the same. So PLI is essentially 10% of the capex and 10% of the cost of production on annual basis. Is this enough or not? That remains to be seen. But definitely it is moving in the right direction. But BCD has a far-reaching impact in my opinion, because right now Indian industry is not capable of competing with Chinese. There is economies of scale there and there are production efficiencies, and really this old thinking that China is only about cost, not about technology is not true. The best solar technologies today are in China, and China has a very, very promising technology roadmap. So we have to start somewhere in India. So that absolutely requires government protection. And we have to really see the big gorilla in the room. Indian private sector hasn't been comfortable in taking technology risks at all. For various reasons, we missed the semiconductor industry boat. Now we are almost missing the solar boat, because we cannot play the Chinese game and beat Chinese. Our hunger for new technologies by taking appropriate risk should be there to compensate for the advantage China has. Otherwise, we are always going to be higher cost producers compared to China, because we don't have scale, we don't have the right technology. So government will have to actually jump in here and help a little bit. And this help will have to last in one form or the other for 5 years. Now, what Indian private sector should do, rather than simply asking for government to do more and more and more, develop some risk appetite. Because of the history of India, what has happened is that managing Indian bureaucracy itself has become a differentiation. But now once modules started coming across Himalayas from China, Indian solar sector actually needed to be globally competitive. Unfortunately, it is not. Because of that, some protection is required. But beyond that, we should view this as only a starting point. So it is a joint responsibility between government and Indian private sector. Unless Indian private sector figures out how to take risks, no amount of government help is going to be sufficient. So one is the starting trouble we have because of the advantage China already has. But once we actually get into steady state, we will lose our advantage if we don't move into technology mindset. Because I can tell you in last 10 years, except in cells, there has been no system breaking invention or discovery that has happened in polysilicon and crystal. And with my experience, I can tell you, the technology complexity increases as you move upstream. The simplest part of this node is modules. The next is slicing. Then it is cells, then it is crystal growth, then it is polysilicon in my view. So when we talk about PLI scheme, although there is benefit to backward integrating, the focus has been modules. What are we doing in India? We have to actually produce electricity. Obviously, we have to build solar farms. Then raw material for solar farm is modules. So we decided to actually start making modules. Raw material for modules is cells. So we decided to slowly start making cells. Has the private sector asked the question, what is the differentiation of this node? Does it make sense to directly jump to polysilicon or crystal growth? In fact, when solar industry started in India, actually in a big way, Indian industry was more suited based on core competencies to make polysilicon, because polysilicon is a fine chemical. India already has a very well established chemical industry, and it has this industry since many decades. And polysilicon was a differentiated sector, and if we had a global view, we could take a view that we will make polysilicon and export it to actually other countries who need polysilicon. But that wasn't the view. Mechanically, we are backward integrating, only to actually make raw materials without asking what is the differentiation of making that product. So we need to take a step back as a private industry, and I come from a private industry. And we have to understand what is the differentiation we bring to the table. Otherwise, why should there be margins? I make a case to you, a module player should not have any margins, because every module player is a marginal player with a marginal cost. Supply curve there is flat. When supply curve has certain slope, independent of economies of scale, it is because of technology. That means one player can be differentiated compared to the other, which also means there is risk. If you do not execute operations properly, if you do not execute technology properly, develop technology properly, your cost could be above the marginal cost of the marginal player. Then you go out of business. That is the risk-taking ability I am talking about. We cannot always actually look for risky arbitrages in this country. So I basically actually request government to take a look at this. The biggest gorilla in the room as far as Atmanirbhar Bharat is concerned is not modules, is not cells to that extent. It is making crystals and it is making polysilicon. Now PLI scheme is extremely well designed, because actually your probability of getting PLI increases with the backward integration. But the central node is still modules. So there may be actually some other scheme or some complementary idea that focuses on polysilicon. There should be some advantage in isolation to getting into polysilicon production, in isolation for doing crystals. So we need to actually get out of this inertia of slow backward integration and move to intelligent analysis of differentiation. What drives the margins? Unless actually we start thinking like that, it is going to be very difficult. So that is why I think BCD is very important. Now, with 4,500 crores of PLI, which is approximately 600 million. We talked about it. It is 10% of the capex required and 10% of the manufacturing cost. It will help for some period of time. But BCD will protect us against actually China for a longer period of time, and PLI will be captured by only few players. But BCD will be applicable to everybody in India. And unlike many people believe, BCD is not going to give very high margins to module player. Maybe it is going to be for a short period of time. There will be competition within India, and Indian module supply curve will remain flat. It may be at the level higher than Chinese supply curve, but it is going to be a flat supply curve, right? So from that point of view, competition is good, and it will also help actually cell makers. It will also trigger polysilicon production and crystal growth. So BCD has a significant value, but I urge both private sector to think about differentiation in generating margins, not just depend on the government help. And I request government to further optimize actually these schemes that have more focus on the more complex nodes of this value chain. There are many other things to say, but in gist, we have to look at the scale and the technology, and then how private sector has to play a role here and government has to play a role.
Thanks a lot, Milind. Before I go to Amit, Ruchin, I believe, has to leave now to attend other engagements. So Ruchin, the key summary so far, of course, we'll hear Amit also, is that
I like to ask, Ruchirji, is he giving from the government side, not only on the manufacturing, but the BOS item, BOM item, right from the glass, EVA, back seat, that kind of thing, This is also required.
Yeah, so essentially, I think the summary, even taking what Gautam just mentioned, what we heard so far, Ruchin, as a takeaway, is essentially the PLI scheme limited to cells and modules will reach barely a double-digit gigawatt levels, close to 40% in cell and module level. And with the minute we add polysilica and we add wafering, it might become inadequate drastically. We also heard that there are economics of scale. There are certain levels, like for example, a 12 gigawatt per line, at which polysilica tends to become economical. So hence, if someone needs to set up a line, they need to do probably around that number. And making a line of smaller capacity doesn't make sense. We also heard the importance of the BCD, as Gautam just pointed out, and also as Ivan pointed out, and also the other two panelists, not just for the existing modules and cell levels, but also at some point to polysilica, because energy cost in polysilica is predominant, and India will have a slight disadvantage in the cost of energy compared to our neighbors, and hence there has to be a protection around that. Gautam mentioned around similar protection for components like glass and EVA and Tedlar, backsheet and others as well. So that's the other part that also we got as a takeaway. And of course, the industry taking risk on its own, moving ahead is the other piece we heard. I will come to Amit now and listen, but I believe you need to leave us right now. So
yes, I'll quickly just add here.
Yeah.
First of all, my apologies. I have to leave. I'm already getting calls. So why we were given the smallest outlay? The reason lies in the context. So if you see in all these years, our capacity addition, the manufacturing capacity addition has not been very encouraging for a variety of reasons. Even the safeguard duty, the way it was implemented, it remained a change in law for all the large projects. 2 years and then again another third year, it was a change in law. So I think what changed this entire narrative was the BCD. Something which gave certainty and long-term vision. And of course, the much larger sized WTO compliant DCR schemes, which have created what we estimate a DCR market of around 36 plus gigawatts over a period of 2 to 3 years. So I think all this has changed the narrative. And I fully agree with what the panelists said. If we just consider cell and module, then our estimates suggest that the PLI scheme can support around 18 gigawatts, considering that we ask you to set up double the capacity than what we actually support. But then we were very much certain that we don't want just the cells and modules, and we want the entire value chain. And that's the reason why from day one we have been trying very hard. We have been kind of taking suggestions or some kind of consent from the prospective investors regarding their plans. And now that the bids have already been submitted, we'll be taking up to the government a firm proposal showing that see, there is an inclination towards integration and of course scale. So all that has really helped, be it the BCD or the DCR thing, to change that narrative, and so that we can support more applicants. In addition to PLI, we coordinated with Ministry of Electronics, and fortunately they have been very kind to accept our request, and polysilicon wafer ingots and cells, they have been included in their scheme, what is called as specs, wherein 25% capital subsidy is provided. So I believe all such plans which somehow fail to fructify in PLI will surely get the much needed support under specs. So my best wishes to all the prospective manufacturers. I see a lot of present developers getting into manufacturing. That's really a good news. And in the end, I'll only say that we hope that our outlay under PLI scheme is increased. And as far as the BCD is concerned, yes, of course, probably at some point of time later on, some kind of rationalization may come. But as of now, we will continue with this BCD. And as somebody pointed out, that as more and more upstream stages like wafer or polysilicon, they come up, the duty exemption, I mean, they're already under duty, but then they are exempted. So the duty exemption extended to such products may be reviewed depending on the installed capacity that comes up in the country. So with these words, I take your leave. I'm so sorry I'm not able to join you for more. Thank you very much. Best wishes.
Thanks a lot, Rachin. Thanks for being a part of this. So Amit, the same question to you as well.
So thanks, Santosh. I think so. A lot has already been said by the other speakers. I also welcome the PLI scheme first and foremost. Whether it's sufficient, insufficient, maybe it's over a period of time we'll realize. And I'm sure Government of India would take necessary corrective steps to see if we really need it more. But looking towards the way, if we have to see how we want to organize this incentivization as well as PLI scheme, or even the duty BCD coming into the picture, maybe looking at the examples of the Western developed countries, like take a case of Germany, they developed the market. It was other way around, developing of the market using an EEG scheme, where they actually predefined the targets. Yeah, and the targets were clearly laid down in terms of gigawatts of achievement, how the tariff goes down. I think so something similar we can look at, rather than capping it at the number of 4,500 crore. Actually, it can start that these are the targets. As you keep achieving these targets, the incentivization will keep reducing actually over a period of time. We have a clear-cut target in terms of market size, is what we want to reach to 450 gigawatt. But to achieve that, let there be a fair competition, a race, by giving targets actually. And as we keep achieving, if the Government of India can come up with a calendar or a targets-based achievement, how we want to change it, I think so that can really give a big confidence to the investors that this is going to last long, and it is based on the volumes that we are looking for, rather than only at the money at what is going to get invested. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Amit. So I think I already summarized it, the main findings. So let's move on to the next point. Out of the 3.5 gigawatt-ish of cell capacity that exists in India, I believe close to 2 gigawatt is on multicrystalline footprint. And this multicrystalline, what I was also reading and hearing, will only last for the next couple of years and eventually has to be phased out. Similarly, the new capacity of close to 6.5 gigawatts on cell line announced, plus the existing one, which is on PERC, will make around 7.5 gigawatts only. On the module side as well, out of the 15-ish gigawatt of capacity that exists, I am pretty sure part of the capacity would get phased out when the wafer sizes also moves up from the lower M numbers to the higher M numbers per se. So on the technology front, the question is, what should be the ideal we should choose for? Should we look at the lowest cost of energy as the single thing? We should not be designing, let us say, Harley Davidsons or Benz cars in terms of products. We should be doing a Maruti kind of a footprint, a Hyundai kind of a footprint, something that sells in India very well. So is it LCOE that we should target? Or should we be going for HIT? Should we be going in for heterojunction? Should we be going in for TOPCon? Should we go high on technology and not follow the footprints laid down by China already and be a Me Too RAN behind them? So what should be the footprint, not only in cell and module technology, but also on the polysilica side of it, on the crystal growth side of it? So some thoughts, Ivan, starting with you.
Yeah, so that's a good question. See, what I have seen of the industry in the last decade, 2 decades almost, is that there is a very steep learning curve that the industry follows in terms of technology, in terms of cost. And you need to plan any future investment to take care of that learning curve. In the sense, the technology gets outdated very fast. So whatever you're saying, whatever you're calling as top of the line or state of art today, in all probability in 3 years, things will get outdated, 2 to 3 years. That's a typical. So if you take PERC today and you think that PERC is going to get you, forget about multicrystalline. Multicrystalline is anyway, it's gone. If you think that PERC is going to take you to the next 10 years, it's not going to happen, obviously. And when investments are made, they are meant to last for at least 3 to 5 years before you get your, at least the equity returns back, right? And that's when you need to be flexible when you design investments, that you pick up the best in class now, or in fact, when we are planning now, you should actually plan when these lines will start production. What is the best in class modules that will be there in the market, which is 1 year from now or 1.5 years from now. That is what you should start the planning with. And then you need to build in that flexibility in the plant layouts, choice of machinery, and future technology roadmaps in terms of either reduction of silver paste, bringing costs down by that, reduction of wafer thicknesses, etc., to take care that your lines are flexible and stays relevant even after 4 to 5 years. And it's not very difficult to do that. And that's the approach that one should follow. Otherwise, see, if the investments made today cannot last or cannot be flexible and they are kind of locked in today, then you will fall behind in the PV learning curve very fast and you will become irrelevant in the market. That's the first and foremost, concept that needs to be built in all these new technology, the new investments that are being made. If that doesn't happen, then, so whether it is large wafer, whether it is PERC or TOPCon or whatever, and whether it is large size wafer, whether it is multi-bus bar, everything that you need to plan today has to be future proof to the extent possible. And I think there is a play between the capex and the initial investment required for that, and getting the sort of expected IRRs for the project. The other thing is also important is when you set up something, the execution risk that you take is also quite high, because when you talk about these kind of next-gen technologies or things that you are investing in today, like today, if you see, other than Tata, there's nobody, not a functional PERC cell line today. Okay, what Adani has is a different generation of PERC, not the ALOX-based PERC which Tata has. They are really the first. And large-size modules, there's nobody in India who's making large-size modules today, M10s and M12s, G12s rather. And wafer, obviously, there is nothing, zero. So you are actually investing in a technology for which expertise is not available or execution background is not available in the country. So that is another big risk which any investment will carry. And therefore, how do you take care of that risk? There are various ways of doing it, but this is something that needs to be considered very, very seriously, because otherwise your ramp-ups will get delayed, your stabilization will get delays, your project execution will go for a toss. So these investments that are being made now, since this is a CTO conference, I think this is something that, being in the industry for a long time, understanding what are the nuances of, ramp-up, execution, etc., all of that, and technology race. So I think this is something that we should talk about as how do you take care of these risks on a broader scale. Of course, each company will have a different way to mitigate those risks, but these are some of these big elephants which are already there in the room, and you need to recognize that they're there. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks a lot, Ivan. So just a follow-up thing on that, Ivan. If, for example, what I have understood you correctly, it is, do not look at what is currently state of art, because the current state of art gets vintage in 3 years, 4 years time. Look at what is just emerging out. So for example, as a just a theory, if TOPCon is what is emerging out, and let us say it is better economical compared to the IBCs, should people start investing into it? Should that be their approach?
So it's not investing on it right now, because if you are investing it, see, the timing of investment in a technology depends on the technology maturity curve, which initially goes very fast and then plateaus out a little bit. And when it gets plateaued out, that means the risk reduces. That means more and more capacities are available and more competitive equipment manufacturing capacities are available. So a lot of more people have expertise with it. Today, PERC has reached 80% to 85% penetration in China. But the PERC that we know of was discovered in Martin Green's lab in 1983. So it has taken 38 years for that technology to mature from a lab to actually a commercial scale deployment, which is almost like 80% or more than 100 gigawatt or 90 gigawatt of the total global cell capacity, or more than that actually, 120 gigawatt maybe. So, and this transition has just happened in the last 3 years. If you take a step back, go back 3 years in China, PERC was just coming in. Large scale PERC facilities were coming in. It's the same thing with TOPCon today. TOPCon has a very minuscule, about 8 to 10 gigawatt of penetration in China. The reason is risks are high, a lot of processes are not known, and equipment costs are very high. So it's always important to understand as a technologist, where do you catch the technology and what is the timing that you need to make for investing in that technology. Otherwise, if you are trying to go too fast, you will fail. If you are trying to be slow, you will lose out in competitiveness. So it's a tricky kind of a choice, but I think most of the things are pretty clear right now, which way the technology is going.
Thanks, Ivan. So it's the golden mean in a way. So I'll just break the rhythm and then probably ask Kapil the same question and then go to the Gautam as next, yeah?
I thought by the time my turn comes, everything would be said, so I don't have to do a repetition.
So I just caught you by surprise, yeah? In a way.
So I think Ivan has covered most of the thing when you talk about advancements. I would say given the present slate what we have in India, because you said we have certain capacities of cells and modules already in existence, it's almost a clean slate where we want to go from here. We can, for all practical purpose, we can say that, okay, we are running on a clean slate. So we have the benefit compared to any other place who is already doing that. There is a chance of a leapfrog available to us. And we have done that in past in other sectors. So can we do the leapfrog here as well? So that's first thing. We have all seen how the technology has shifted in last 3 years from poly to mono. And if a couple of companies in China can do that, what do we do as India right now? So the choice of technology selection becomes very important given the fact that when you are planning to put these large scale fabs within backward integration, it may take you 3 to 4 years by the time you actually start your planning to from concept to commissioning. And you really want that by the time your lines are up, commissioned, you are still relevant for the market. Because market in India would definitely be driven by an LCOE, which is lowest cost of electricity. Whatever you are producing should satisfy the end consumer's aim towards achieving an LCOE, which is lowest for them. So you may have a very expensive module, but if you're not able to gain out of that additional delta of cost, the required gain in the number of units what it generates, what's the purpose it is serving towards and from an end consumer perspective. So we need to keep these things certainly in mind during our technology selection. We've all seen wafer sizes moving from M6 to M10, G12. We really now need to see where the China is moving. So they are actually moving from 210 to 230 to 40 as well, from the same 300 mm of the ingot pulling what they do. I mean, they are seeing if we can do even higher squarish cutting. And so we also need to see that is it possible for us to at least design lines which are flexible. So when you design line, you also have constraints. You know, if I want to do from M6 to G12 right now, do I have a flexibility to then do from M10 to G12 to G12 plus? Or should I miss my market of doing M6 right now, which is more prevalent of 166 right now? So maybe I am doing a design which might not be very, very relevant right now, but may be relevant 3-4 years down the line when M10, G12 or G12 plus becomes a reality actually. So from an TRL level, which is technology readiness level, we need to evaluate each of the technology. It's easy if you have a mono-PERC line right now to upgrade it to TOPCon, because there are certain changes you do and you are still able to get to a TOPCon line. So while you are designing a mono-PERC line, you can see if I put a test setup for a TOPCon right now and see how the whole process works. But it's a completely new line if you are planning for any other technology like heterojunctions. So you will not be able to upgrade it at a later date if you have a PERC line right now. So all those aspects, and apart from that, the BOS also needs to be looked. While you are making bigger modules with bigger wafers, do I have the right set of balance of system components available? If I am doing a half cut or a triple cut, and if my module currents are increasing beyond a certain limits, do I have the string combiner boxes? Do I have the inverters which are capable, even if they are capable to take in higher current, but am I increasing my BOS cost to accommodate those higher currents or higher voltage? So ultimately it boils down to how you really look at the whole LCOE and the technology readiness level for any technology is what I would summarize this as.
Thanks a lot, Kapil. Amit, your views on this?
Yep. So I would say there's one thing that I would like to add is that we are on the verge of starting this backward integration through PLI schemes. What I would see relevance coming in as far as important for India is concerned is that it's easier said than done, is the successful players who get out of the PLI scheme should try to align and come on a conscious basis on one technology to be followed. Because if you'll have to compete with the global manufacturers, if individual manufacturers follow discrete technologies with the capacities what we are looking for, it will be impossible to keep competing with the global biggies actually, where the capacities are in the gigawatts and gigawatts. So the best thing would be if all the players who are successful come together, follow one technology, which is a futuristic technology, because the current one, if you have to beat the China in their own game, it will be impossible. Yeah, today they are far behind their game actually. So one, we need to look at the most advanced one, but harmonization that all the players can come together and follow and pursue one technology will be really important milestone for us in India to take it forward.
So interesting thought, not to have discrete technologies, but to have homogeneity. Saman Saab, your views on the whole?
Yes, I'll say in differently first, because from the developer's point of view, we have to see what is the market going on in India right now. So monofacial wafer with the poly is already obsolete, and also cost-wise, it's pretty high compared to the generations when we do it. P-type of monopark, which is there right now, it is only for another 2 to 3 years' time. The reason is that, when we develop a product, we like to understand what is the performance in the first year and the subsequent year. So that means in the poly, we had seen like earlier, about 4 or 5 years back, at the end of 25 years, 80% is the power output. And the first year degradations was, because of the LIDs, 3%, and the subsequent year was 0.7%. With the P-type monopark, we had seen that the first year their offering was 2.5%, now it is 2%, and subsequent year 0.5%. So at the end of 25 years, so it is 80%, 85% is the power output, This is about the monofacial. If you look at the bifacial, the first year is 2% and subsequent is 0.45%, So at the end of 25 years is 87% power output. But that's not the case. The thing is that we have to look at the technology, that where it is going. How long the P-type will sustain? Only for 2 to 3 years. So when we are switching over to the N-type, which is coming in the TOPCon, or with maybe the new technology, I'm not coming out the HJT right now, because we have to see that either HJT or IBC, these are all N-type wafer, or MWT. These are all a very high reliable product. On the crystal growth side, I'll come back to the, on the crystal, but first of all, I will complete on the developer's point of view. So we see that the first year is 0.5% to 1%, with the N-type, with the TOPCon, and subsequent year is around 0.4%. So at the end of 25 years, 90% is the power output. If that is my objective, So we have to see that how we set up our line, whether the investment, say, for module is a $7 million for 1 gigawatt. The cell is around 45 gigawatt, including the utility is around 50 gigawatt, $15 million, right? So all this investment which are coming, we have to see that there are several factors. It's not only the conversion, but the capital investment, So capital investment, there are two parts. One is that the depreciation, the other one on the interest part, Apart from that one, you have to see that the capacity utilizations in India, as it is pretty low. So there is a market and you have to cater it. I'm coming back to the point in terms of the quality as well, like in India, we have to see that one time I have taken a BIS certificate or IC certificate, is it that enough that you will cater your whole product? We need to have a thorough investigations on the accelerated test 2 times or 3 times, which I know the top level, the tier 1 players which are doing, and it is verified by the third-party laboratory, and they are the good. But at the same time, the product which is on the continuous productions, is there, is that maintain the same type of quality? So with this one, I'm coming back to the, on the manufacturing side, as another 18 to 20 months time, another 20 gigawatt level of the cell and the module is going to be added. And this investment has to be, supported not only from the domestic, to the developers, but there is a huge chance for export as well, right? So today we are importing more than 85% of the module, which is more than $3 billion, So we can save this kind of a huge foreign exchange, and that's why I'm telling you, the BOS, the component which we are bringing from China as on date, the conversion cost on the module today is something like, 24 to 25 cents. And out of that one is almost 1.5 to 2 cents is going on the logistic costs, And also the financial charges is 0.5 cents, which is coming, So all these components, when we create an ecosystems in India, so it's not only in one region, it may be, in a southern region, western region, central regions, in the east region. So like, either in a solar park or kind of a thing, so that you maintain a minimum inventory, first in, first out, something like that, so that pretty easily within 5 hours, 10 hours, maximum, it is reaching to your factory, so minimum inventory. And on the BOS side, only 3 to 5 gigawatt level of these things, is there. We can set up a manufacturing factory, and as Kapil has already told, that if you set up a PTI, but there is a danger that, after 2 years is going to obsolete. So you have to update with the TOPCon. That means on the utility side, you have to see that your compressed air, your deionized water, your all gases, all the different chemical dosing system, the effluent which you are putting there in that facility, you have to keep a provision to keep that space in the particular tool, so that you can quickly upgrade. It's not like, I know some of the manufacturing companies still struggling, they have to close down. There is no doubt on that within another couple of months' time, and set up a new factory now with the, with the Park technology. So we have to be visionary in terms of, all the new technology which is coming into the, there, And coming back to the other point, which is very, very important about the wafer size, thanks to the semiconductor industry, which is pretty matured in 2005, 12-inch wafer already developed. But in the semiconductor industry, we get even thousands of circuit on a single wafer. But here in the solar cell, is a diode. That means the voltage is around 750 millivolt, and the current depend upon on the area is something like 41 milliampere. The current density is 41 milliampere, JSC. So if you multiply with the current, that means that is your, the high amount of current. What Ivan has already told, So in M6 wafer, I'm talking about the half-cut cells, something like you can take about 8 ampere current and 8 to 10 ampere current and around 45 volt. But when we design our system in a developer's point of view, we look at a different point of view. In LCOE, there are two things. One is that capex cost plus opex cost divided by the generations. But these generations depend upon two things, If you have a higher module wattage, definitely it's a boost. If you have a reliability, means low degradations, that is also that. I told you that is also a good one. But the other things like what we have to do with the fixed steel structure or the single axis tracker. But definitely I'll go for single axis trackers with the glass technology and with the low degradation. So not only that, there's some other effect like, what we say that the micro crack which developed either not from the transportation but during installation as well, or maybe any kind of, adverse weather conditions. So looking into all conditions, if we see, I could see that it's not only that it will be shifted from the P-type to N-type to a larger format like M6 to M10, M10 with 180 to M12. In the M12 wafer, the thing is that the current is 17 ampere current, there's a very high current, So if you do in a bifacial module with 70 ampere current and with the albedo like 20% gain, so another, say 3.4 ampere, that means 20 ampere current. And if you put any Y connectors, this will be a 40 ampere current. Be careful on that, because 30 ampere is the fuse rating, So we have to see that our inverter is also able to take this high amount of current. And also, there is an advantage like as the voltage is low, around 35 volt. So if we divide, say, 1500 volt system divided by 35, that means it can take more number of modules in the single string.
Correct.
Therefore, from the developer's perspective, in the structure, cables, as well as in the land, we have a better preference on that,
Understand.
So looking into all this, overall scenario, we have to see the market. It's not only in India, but as well as the export, and we have to make our product and and the quality. We have to focus on the quality as well.
Clear, Gautam. Yeah, thanks a lot for that, the comprehensiveness of it. Milind, the last word on this topic with you.
Well, thank you, Santosh. I hope you saved the best for the last.
For sure.
Listen, it is not that complex. Let us separate signal from noise. The fundamental driver for decision making is LCOE. Electrons don't have color. Electrons don't have brand equity. Okay. In the end, whether you are using high efficiency, low efficiency, medium efficiency, what matters is what is LCOE. So, to your question, whether we should be doing heterojunction, IBC, TOPCon, PERC, all of that will be determined by what is the final LCOE. I mean, why I am saying it is not that complex. It is not that technology is not changing downstream. Yes, I mean, module anyway is the rat race, but adjusting actually technologies in module is relatively simple. Cell technologies are changing over a period of 2 to 3 years, but fundamentally from polysilicon to crystal growth to wafer, the fundamental platform is not changing. And I'll tell you, in my view, what should be the decision all the way from polysilicon to modules. Bear with me. Why fundamentally technologies have not changed the platform from polysilicon to crystal growth and wafers is because this has been adopted from the semiconductor industry, which is already many, many decades old. And semiconductor industry had been quality conscious. So you had to actually take that technology platform and make necessary changes, and these changes are not easy. Obviously, they have a significant technical component to it, but it had to be done. So this section of the value chain is undergoing the second S-curve, in my point of view. Semiconductor industry is very mature. Already, you can see it is growing at around 7% per annum, but fundamental technology changes, although Moore's law is holding, are not too many. But now, once the solar industry took over, the same technology platforms were adopted. This is a very unique situation. It did not happen too many times. 50 to 60 years of inventory of learning is reapplied in a different way in the solar technology. That is why crystal growth costs, polysilicon true cost, forget about selling price. Cost of production has come down from more than $100 to around $5 to $6 cash cost. I will submit to you there is no fundamental change in Siemens process. The most differentiated process in the entire value chain, in my view, is fluidized bed reactor technology. That itself is around 40 years old. Initially developed by Ethyl Corporation and then Union Carbide. There are two families. Zakralski process was invented in 1958. That is still the state of the art actually today. Only engineering variation of that, Richard Zakralski, semi-batch, and continuous Zakralski, they are being implemented today. But the nature of these technologies is such that on this platform, if you execute properly, you can differentiate yourself from the competition. Now, as far as cells are concerned, yes, today PERC is the state of the art, and TOPCon appears to be actually coming across the corner. Heterojunction has always been the technology of tomorrow since 10 years. But in the end, decision making is very simple. Let me just tell you, in polysilicon, if it is possible for you to do electronic grade polysilicon by fluidized bed reactor, do it. Because it not only offers lowest cost at the polysilicon level, it also enables lower cost production of crystal and wafers. But if it is not available, only choice available in India is improved Siemens and some version of modified Siemens. Even there, you can differentiate yourself to some extent compared to your competition, but not to that extent. So it is very clear, either you do fluidized bed reactor if it is available to you, but the right fluidized bed reactor technology, and otherwise you have to do modified Siemens. In crystal growth, nobody is doing casting. Although cost of crystal production is lower on a per kg basis, if you really look at overall LCOE, multi really doesn't work. This was clear to people who are vertically integrated 10 years ago. I still remember in 2012, I went to IISA and made the case that mono was actually cheaper compared to multi. But I was told that solar energy itself is not viable. This is the level of gap of understanding we have, actually, academic understanding versus industrial reality. But in any case, the choices in Crystal Growth right now is to do Richard Zakrzewski, you have to do mono. There also you can differentiate yourself from the competition and slowly move on to continuous Zakrzewski on the same platform. As far as the wafering is concerned, diamond coated wire slicing has become the standard. If you don't do it, you are at a disadvantage. You cannot differentiate yourself in this node, but that is the bare minimum one needs to do. As far as the cell is concerned, since this is evolving over a period of actually 2 years, and evolutionary changes have always been successful compared to revolutionary. We were the company 10 years ago who were championing heterojunction, but what has happened is that we were also actually pushing for PERC, moving from aluminum BSF because we were vertically integrated. Now, old technologies were adopted and they were matured, and PERC and TOPCon, PERC was evolutionary from aluminum BSF. TOPCon is evolutionary from PERC, and they are closing gap with heterojunction. So it is all right to actually invest money in PERC today and be ready to actually move to TOPCon. If the choice is for heterojunction, that is the choice a company should do once you enter into cell making, because PERC and TOPCon are not going to actually go away. PERC is the industry standard today. If one has to place their bets, it is going to be TOPCon. But anyway, there is going to be actually a requirement for higher capacity going forward. We cannot be lost in trees and lose sight of jungle. Okay, there is some risk, limited risk from polysilicon to Crystal Growth in terms of decision making, very high risk in terms of execution and technical differentiation. As far as cells and modules are concerned, really in cells, there is some differentiation compared to competition, but otherwise you are using standard equipment. That is why differentiation goes down, although technologies are evolving. In module, there is no differentiation. In module, you just adapt. I mean, obviously going to larger formats is also not such a big complex thing. Whatever you do for the largest format available. Today it is M12, that translates into 300 millimeter crystal growth. And if you really want to go to higher formats, there is no technological barrier. You just have to redesign your crystal growth. It is not as if I am buying a different PECVD furnace versus just making modification to your crystal cooler shell. So from each and every node, choices are clear. Yes, larger formats are here to stay only because of LCOE. Why industry is taking its time? You know, sometimes collectively decisions are not made very fast. People took myopic view. Everybody was looking at cost of production, at polysilicon, at crystal growth, at wafering, at cells, at modules. Nobody took LCOE view. If you take LCOE view, you would say, although on a per watt basis, mono cost is higher, it is cheaper for the customer. That is the only sustainable technology. So I have been hearing this in my entire career, that decision making is so complex. I'm not so sure it is complex. What is complex is execution and differentiation from your competition and understanding where the differentiation is coming from. Otherwise, we'll be going round and round and round. And I have been talking to actually various big industrial houses in India in the past. Recently, I have stopped, obviously, when I was part of Sun Edison. The same technologies that we were trying to sell are now in the hands of Chinese. And the same companies actually I was talking to, I will not name them, now they are interested in getting the technology from China. This is what I mean by trusting your own analysis, understanding the risks, and doing things before somebody else does it. In this CTO conference, what am I hearing? We have to actually wait until risk comes down. That we should be hearing in some other actually forum. In CTO forum, we should be talking about how to manage risks, how to take the right decision, develop the technology roadmap, leapfrog the competition. That, in my view, is the role of a CTO. So decision making is absolutely not complex. I'm not saying it is easy. I'm only talking about strategic decision making. There is always some risk going downstream. In module anyway, actually, it is very simple, and it is not very complex in polysilicon and crystal growth. And in cells also, I don't think it is such a difficult decision right now. Yes, there are going to be changes, but we need to be ready to adapt. But in the end, it is LCOE. And incidentally, what has happened, many people are confused by how actually mono modules are selling at higher price, mono wafers are selling at higher price, thinking that today, cost of mono wafer production is higher than multi, or cost of mono module production is higher than multi. That is not true. That gap is very small. And if you really look at what is possible with the current technology platform, mono wafer will be produced on a per wafer basis at the same cost as a multi wafer. Mono module cost is going to be same or lower than the multi module. But you will not see that in the prices, because mono is the superior product that offers lower LCOE. There is going to be premium. So to separate noise from signal, it is important to also look at the cost, not actually get confused by the margins these premium players are enjoying, right? To me, if you really take a step back, do the bottoms-up analysis, look at the market, look at the technology roadmap, and look at what the present technology can do. You know what? One last thing I want to say: there are many new technologies on the horizon, but timing is very important, because still cost reduction is possible. If right technology doesn't come at the right time, although it has technical superiority, because of lack of economies of scale, because of maturity of the competition, it will never see the light of the day. Okay. And in cells, finally, I just want to actually tell you, yes, tandem cells are coming in one form or the other, in high volume manufacturing only after 5 years with appreciable market share. Perovskite and silicon tandems now are the hot property in research, but other tandems are also possible. But that will be complementary to silicon. If anybody is thinking that tandems are going to now destroy silicon value chain, no. It is going to complement silicon value chain. So I submit to you, actually maybe I am taking a completely different view. Strategic decision making is relatively simple, because solar industry is relatively mature in terms of technology platforms. Although changes are happening, we should recognize that. Anyway, that is my answer. LCOE is the fundamental driver. Everything else, whether it is a Toyota, Mercedes, or a Ford Focus, in the end, it is the LCOE that matters. And we shouldn't take a myopic view. We should connect everything to LCOE.
Thanks a lot, Milind. To summarize, what we heard is, we heard that the technologies of solar are not new. They have been existing in the semiconductor space for a long time. We also heard that it takes time for the technology to evolve. Sometimes it takes decades together for it to move from lab to commercialization. Catching the right point, the golden mean, as Ivan pointed out, is one of the things that needs to be looked at. There is a general agreement on LCOE being important as the single parameter. The definition of LCOE, Milind mentioned, Kapil also seconded the way the LCOE gains importance per se. We also had an interesting view from Amit that given that India is taking off right now, there should be a synergizing of technologies. People should look at similarities in technologies rather than competing on different technologies. There was a view on broad basing what the solar technology implication is to BOS, to the currents, to the inverters and downstream, which Gautam pointed out as well. And in the end, I think we agree that technology risks need to be taken up by the industry in order for it to kind of move ahead and not always play the safer bet, because playing the safer bet means you'll always be lagging behind other nations. Any question and answers you can ask around from the audience? In case anyone wants to ask any question, please introduce yourself and ask the question off. Yeah, someone is there with the mic for the gentleman here in the green shirt.
Good afternoon. This is Alexander from Hild Energy. My question is, what are the protocols that needs to be followed in a manufacturing factory to ensure the quality of the modules? What is the testing facilities and what kind of parameters that needs to be maintained to ensure the quality of the modules to the customer? That is prime importance as of now.
Sure. Thanks. So Ivan, probably I'll request you to respond.
It's a very innocuous question, but it has a very long answer. But I'll try to make it short. So the answer is that there is no single rule of how to make a good quality module. It varies from from manufacturer to manufacturer. But there are certain uh, basic things that needs to be ensured. Like you have the right raw material, you have the right tools or the right combination of tools which makes the cell or the module. You have the right trained people, because man, machine and materials, all three are important. And most importantly, you need to have a totally benchmarked quality plan around making that product, okay? So when I say benchmark, it has to be benchmarked with the best in class in the industry. You cannot design your own quality plan and then go ahead and do production, but you need to have a benchmark, best in class, globally followed quality plan. Does that answer?
Thanks a lot.
Can I add something?
Oh, yes, please.
Yeah. Okay. Now, when you are setting up a module plant or module manufacturing facility, you have to look into all the bombs. What is their role? First of all, the solar cell. If you look into the solar cell, which is coming in the module, is that temperature coefficient, LID, and the PID. At a later stage, when you make the module, this module goes, as I told you, in an accelerated test. You check it, the kind of the degradations level in a subsequent year, or there is a thermal cycle, damp heat, humidity freeze. And if it's the monofacial modules, there is a called UV radiation. One has to be very careful that in India, there is a 250 kilowatt of UV radiations which is coming. But as per the IEC or the BIS, only 60 kilowatt is the pass or the limit, So you have to be careful that it has to go in an extended, all the tests, number one. When you set up a factory, there is a called IQC, the internal quality test. So there is a quality plan and the test protocol. You check within the certain limit, all the parameters which is coming from the manufacturing, so that you can traceable, from those the bombs, including their self life. Some of the material you need to keep in a very low, controlled temperature as well as low humidity, right? There is a process control. So right now the process with the kind of a 5 bus bar ribbon, which is called flat ribbon, is going obsolete. So now it is coming the wire ribbon. And this wire ribbon is enhance the efficiency 0.4%, right? So it's reflects the light, and so therefore you have to see that what is that solderability, the quality of the pill strength. And then if it is a glass and the monofacial modules, then glass, EVA backsheet, there is a called pill strength. Then there is another test which is the material when it's coming, is called the anodization strength, because this anodization is very, very important when you're handling the high, voltage like 1500 volt systems, So all this quality, and there is a final quality test which is called 2 times EL inspections, the electroluminescence, which checks the micro crack in between, and also in the finally, when the product is in the packing stage, it is there. And the last one is the flash test. The flash test is the power measurement. One has to be very careful that what kind of calibrations of the particular gold cell module, and when you make a secondary cells, and what is their uncertainty measurement. So all these parameters and taking into the considerations, right, So one is that IQC, then PQC, and finally is that product which is shipping out and send it to the developers. There is also a quality control plan, that has to be
That's
taken.
right.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Gautam and Ivan. As Ivan was mentioning, very, very comprehensive in holistic also, the process. Any other questions from anyone else? No, I think we have also run out of time. So I would like to thank Informa Markets for having all of us here in this session and organizing this. I would like to thank Ivan, Gautam, Kapil, Milind, and Amit for being a part of this session, and all of you, the audience. Good day. Bye-bye.